Welcome back. And it is still a good morning from us to you. It's time for us to take a look at the SMB across borders. Rita Cabanyoro, good morning, good morning.
Good morning, how are you doing? I'm doing very fine. And speaking about across borders, we kick it off with the immediate neighbors, Kenya, where Toyota has rebranded to Corporation for Africa and Overseas. Now, Toyota Kenya Limited has changed its name to Corporation for Africa and Overseas, CFAO Motors Limited in Kenya, aimed at enhancing multiple brand distribution for cars and making sure motorbikes and equipment are very well versed. Now, the rebranding will see CFAO, whose parent company is Toyota Tosho Corporations, becoming the exclusive dealer for Toyota vehicles in addition to selling Suzuki, Yamaha and Hino brands. The firm will, however, retain its Toyota brand, which will be trading a name while stakeholding and also team running for firm in Kenya will be remaining the same. Now, the change of the names takes effect after their firm attains a required approval through the special resolution by stakeholders and authorization by the board of directors. Now, as part of the expansion strategy, the firm will also be offering quality used cars under the trade name of Automac, as well as parts offered through the WinParts. The company also proposes a range of short and long-term leases through its leasing partners, including other services like fleet management. Just to remind you, in 2016, Toyota Tosho Corporation, their parent company, acquired a Corporation for Africa and Overseas, that is the CFO, based in Paris, in France, as long as its subsidiaries and networks across Africa also being highlighted. The TTC went further to form an African division with all operations in Africa reporting to CFAO Paris. And now its key player in the field of mobility, healthcare, consumer goods, infrastructure, energy in 39 countries in African continent. And finally, the CFO, which started corporations or operations in Africa in 1852, has a turnover revenue of around 5.8 billion euros, around 728 billion Kenyan shillings, and specializes around healthcare, mobility, infrastructure, and consumer bidding. And now that is Toyota changing the name around there to go with the African Corporation for Africa and Overseas, and also operating in areas like Paris, areas like and African countries there being highlighted. But what does it mean, it changing a name there? Will it come with good? Will it come with opportunities? What is it bound to come with?
And earlier this year, Toyota Uganda also had rebranded to the same name of the Corporation for Africa and Overseas Motors Limited. Now it was Toyota Kenya's turn to actually rebrand as well. So I think in the rebranding
calls for more opportunities across African continent, or it actually calls for more maybe collaboration with countries based in Paris, France.
I think since now they're setting a lot of best in African countries, I think they're also now creating room so that they can see that innovations, even because I'm also thinking of a situation whereby an African can come out and design maybe a brand of a car. So I'm looking at all of these opportunities that can arise from such rebranding. Okay. Mainly. And away from Toyota rebranding, Toyota Kenya officially rebranding as well. Let's head to the African Development Bank, as the African Development Bank approves a new borrowing policy that is set to help the poorest African states survive economic shocks. The AFDB approved the new borrowing policy to help the poorest African states survive a debt burden and vulnerabilities linked to economic shocks. The sustainable borrowing policy will replace the previous ones of the non-concessional debt accumulation, that was the NCDA policy, and with emphasis on transparency in debt management, among others, and coordination and partnership with other multilateral banks on the continent. In a statement on Thursday last week, The FDB said that the policy targets recipients to the African Development Fund, the bank's concessional window, which brings together 37 out of the 54 regional member countries of the African Development Bank. The bank will introduce agreed policy actions linked to debt management and transparency in its dialogue with RMCs to promote effective management and transparency in use of public debt. If you look at in consultation with beneficiaries, emphasis will be put on harmonization with the World Bank policy and performance actions and debt limits under the International Monetary Fund debt limit policy. The African Development Bank says this policy will help address the growing debt crisis among the African states that has partly been exacerbated by the economic shocks from various areas. Kenya, for example, intends to raise its debt ceiling from the current 9 trillion Kenyan shillings, which is $78.8 billion, to 13 trillion Kenyan shillings, which is $113.8 billion US dollars. So Kenya is going to raise its debt ceiling from the current 9 trillion Kenyan shillings, and it will be rising to 13 trillion Kenyan shillings. The second raise, which has occurred, which will definitely occur in Kenya in less than 3 years, to bridge a budget deficit of 846 billion Kenyan shillings in the coming financial year, which is 7.48 billion US dollars. At the same time, the World Bank has last week warned the Tanzania's risk of debt distress rating, which worsened from low to moderate after its national debt increased by $132 million to reach to $37.57 billion in just 1 month.
All right then, and continuing moving on with the SMB across border, now we head to still looking out for air transportation around African countries, where African airlines are ready to weather the storms of post-COVID prospects. Now, African airlines are dusting off plans for operations in a post-pandemic market, even as the continent faces a lot of mixed prospects in global air traffic recovery. Now, the International Air Transport Association predicts a firm path to revamp the global air transport or the global air travel, with the passenger number expected to surpass around the 2019 peak in 2024. The bullish outlook is informed by the ease of the travel restrictions in key markets as COVID-19 vaccination reach optimal levels and infections rate recede. Across the globe, airlines posted strong performance, that is for the year in January 2022, with Europe leading the pack and Africa also looking up. Improvements in the major North Atlantic and inter-European markets are the backbone for recovery, with Asia-Pacific recovery expected to continue to lag because of China. The region's largest market continues to cling on to respective border controls. Meanwhile, a sudden spike in fuel prices means the International Air Travel Authority had predicted on for the year of 2022. And when you continue to look at, the airlines are either buying an aircraft, hiring new personnel, or adjusting schedules to shift capacity to markets, and also opening up faster and cutting back, putting on the hold plans route, launching on restricted destination. For instance, this week or earlier on last week, Ethiopian and African largest airline placed an order for 5 brand new Boeing, that is 7778 dedicated fighters, becoming the type launch customer on the continent. And after several episodes starting and stopping, we've seen Nigeria saying it will be finally launching its revamped flag carrier next year. But according to the African Airline Association, 4 airlines continued with their route development plan during the 2021, while another 11 either opened existing routes or they launched new ones. And at the end of January 2022, 22, airlines in the region had reinstated around 78.7% of their pre-COVID capacity. Now, Uganda Airlines, which last year launched new services to Johannesburg and Dubai, is hiring staff for its London office ahead for much anticipated commencement of services to the UK. Kenya Airways, which announced a network review that will see its London service referred to daily new Yowodi, will cease operating the end of May. Now, Kenya Airlines, as we conclude on this one, is also indefinitely postponing the launch of a planned service to Milan, citing a weak market condition in the Italian market. But further south, South African Airways is spoiling up for a return to the market after coming out to restructuring their services around there. So you realize more structuring is being put on, is being considered along the African Airways or Airways travel, where they are ready to weather the storm pre-COVID-19 or post-pandemic. We saw a lot of activities being, imposed on different airlines regarding the COVID-19 restrictions, testing. People had to, stay at the airport for some time now. But now everything is seeming to just cease and move on. And we see that even Uganda Airlines being highlighted, where it's now considering to hire new staff for its London route. You can apply there. I don't know whether you... Why are you laughing? You can apply. A sister can apply too.
No, I've actually realized the aviation before COVID, it's one of those most paying professionals across the world. And clearly, whether you are a pilot or whether you're on the cabin crew, all those places. But according to reports that is actually coming out in here, they clearly show you that African airlines are going to weather the storms of the COVID-19, the post-COVID-19 prospects. So which shows you that according to the International Air Transport Association, they do believe the African airlines are going to get back stronger after the pandemic. And I think even starts with Uganda Airlines here. They've been setting up new routes. There's the London route that you've mentioned that is actually coming in later on. Still this year, we shall be having Mumbai as well added onto the list. By the end of the year, the South African route. By the end of last year, we had the Dubai route. So clearly, you could say that all the aviation sectors in Africa are trying to create room for maybe a future growth, bigger growth. Even the Kenyan Airways, which is actually at the helm of collapsing, is also set up a merger with the South African Airlines to see that they can still stay afloat in the business. So,
and according to reports from the aviation, the most revamping part or the most supportive entities around airlines is the business community, those who travel to go do business on a daily basis or week after week or even days after days. After that, we've got tourists, those are foreign people crossing over, going to different places to make sure they have their leisure time, not just leisure time, but also experiencing their adventurous time. So you realize those are the major two I can say entities that are highly contributing a lot to the airways or airlines travels. And of course we have passengers going. Maybe you could be traveling for
family.
If you're traveling to visit, probably you're going to stay there for a month or a week, whereas a business person is going to keep
to and from.
Yes, to and from. 2 days is coming back, is keeping on flights busy. So and that is as well for the.
Some of us are catching feelings.
That is, and that as well goes for the tourists too. I mean, how many tourists, are crossing over different destination to make sure at least they go and have a look at the beautiful sceneries across Africa.
And of course, just like I say, people are catching flights. And I do hope even the Uganda Airlines.
And what are you catching?
I'm still catching feelings, catching a lot. I hope I will start catching flights very soon. So, but I hope also the Uganda Airlines thinks of the business people that actually head to China in Uganda. Most of them actually be heading to China, and open a route for them as well. But reports still coming in from the Uganda Airlines, still having some crisis in terms of their staff. When you look at the money they pay their staff, is actually still overwhelming, according to the public response on social media. When the public
social media is one of that, you know, of that media component that will create a lot of, I can say, even fights, strikes. That as entities, as organizations, we always need to consider how we react towards the comments on social media. Because I mean, someone will just wake up one day and post, you know, Durham post on, or will just wake up and post to your organization that even you're not paying your workers. So you can imagine. So it depends on how you're going to react. Yeah, you're going to react to that. So until I get someone from the airlines telling me, you know what, I'm not being satisfied, I'm not satisfactory with the payment, that is when we can start. But with social media, they can even make you catch flights. Exactly.
And away from that, we were still talking about post-COVID. But the question is, are we done with COVID? Because in China, businesses have shut as officials widen COVID lockdowns. As reports coming in from China reveal that multinational companies have halted some operations as China widens in its COVID lockdowns, among the biggest since the start of the pandemic. Tens of millions of people across the country faced restrictions, including the entire Jilin province and technology hub Shenzhen, as authorities report record numbers of cases. When you look at some of the companies, Toyota, Volkswagen, and Apple supplier Foxconn are among the firms affected. The lockdowns have raised concerns that crucial supply chains may be disrupted. China on Tuesday reported a record high. Tuesday, which was yesterday, China recorded a record high of more than 5,000 cases, most of which in Jilin, in the province of Jilin. All 24 million residents of the northeastern province were placed under quarantine orders early Monday this week. It is the first time China has restricted an entire province since the Wuhan and Hebei lockdown at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. Jilin residents have been banned from moving around, and anyone wanting to leave the province must apply for police permission before leaving that province to head to another province. So you can clearly see the tight measures that the Chinese government is putting in place in there. It came a day after a 5-day lockdown was placed on the 12.5 million residents of the southern city of Shenzhen, with all the buses and subway services suspended. And yesterday, authorities in Langfeng City, which borders the capital Beijing, as well as Dongguan in the southern province of Guangdong, also imposed immediate lockdowns. Businesses in many of the affected regions have been told to close or have their employees work from home unless they supply the essential services like food, utilities, or any other necessities. And still looking at this, Foxconn, which manufactures iPhones for Apple, stopped its operations in Shenzhen on Monday, saying that the date of resumption would be advised by the local government. But it has several production sites in China, and according to reports coming in, it had adjusted the production line to minimize the potential impact. Its plant in Zhengzhou, the world's largest iPhone factory, remains open as the city was not hit by the restrictions. Toyota, which shut its factory in Changchun City in Jilin province, did not give a timeline for when business would resume, as the Japanese car maker says that the move was made to consider the impact of supplier operation and the safety and security of employees and related parties. German car maker Volkswagen also shuttered operations in Changchun, saying production of Volkswagen and Audi cars and their components was affected, but it hoped to reopen its factory Thursday this week, which will be tomorrow. As on Tuesday, the Shanghai Composite lost 5%, and the Hang Seng Index, where several Chinese technology giants are listed, fell more than 6%. Analysts believe that firms would be able to manage the disruptions. Such lockdowns have happened before, and cities have reopened within a short period of time once the number of COVID cases were within control. Remember very well that Wuhan province recorded the first cases of COVID-19. That was in 2019 as we were heading to 2020. But as 2020, COVID-19 kept on spreading across the globe, and no sooner had it spread than lockdowns stepped foot in almost all the countries across the world, even Uganda recording its first case in April, though we went into our first phase of the lockdown in March 2020. So China is still battling with COVID as sets of lockdown are back again. We are yet to understand how many cases are being recorded in Uganda.
You can imagine all the province, around 24 million people being put under a quarantine. This is something that needs, you know, attention. You can imagine people on other worlds or other continents, you know, excited about revamping back, about getting business on. And how would you feel, I mean, if just President Museveni announced a quarantine in your area or even a lockdown? Would that really make you feel, that will traumatize you at a point? And just like you were telling us, this is another second, you know, quarantine announcement after that of Wuhan that was recorded at the beginning of the pandemic. So the Chinese government had at least tried to release its people, live with COVID-19, but at some point, you know, it gets to your nerve, and I think this is the time when they felt like if they don't do something, maybe the worst would come out. So that is why we see now the 24 million residents are being put under quarantine. So now
I've actually come out to realize that getting permission from the police is
you have to seek
permission before you actually leave during lockdowns. So it was as well the same case here in Uganda, whereby you definitely needed a permission cheat. It takes us back.
You can imagine how many businesses around that particular province that has been, you know, halted down. I mean, if you're in a quarantine, there is no you going to sell anything, neither you going even to buy anything, because they are telling us that any movement has to be authorized. Maybe the government would have highlighted on very early that, you know what, you're going into the lockdown, so people had to shop, or people had to.
And you know, when you look at such situations pushing in, you can clearly look at a situation whereby lockdowns have become inevitable in most of the countries because they seem to be the only measures available. They are the easiest measure available to prevent quick spread of the virus. But I don't think we are ready for a lockdown now, since Ugandans are already in the situation of getting back to recovery. But if at all the cases also rise, then you will definitely see a lockdown getting back. And I would definitely say, just like you or me, no one would want to seek or ask for a lockdown.
Yeah, we all want messages of hope. That's why people go for vaccination, because they want to be okay at the end of the day. But when a reaction comes from the vaccination organization, for example, Pfizer, announcing that, you know, the second jab you had, the third jab you had is not enough. You may require another fourth one. Yes, it tweeted on its Twitter, and you realize that how about the people who got the
those who already
the
got
vaccination?
The booster?
Yes, and the booster. So they're telling you it's not going to be enough. And there you go, now you're planning to get another vaccination. But hey, a lot of questions are running onto your mind. How about after some time it comes out to say, you know what, this is not enough. Am I going to keep vaccinating? Am I going to keep vaccinating myself? Am I going to take boosters for a very long time? For how long is it going to be happening? But anyways, I'm not saying vaccination is bad. I'm not saying that boosting your body or boosting your immunity is bad, but you need to understand that as all this is happening, you need to also relate it with the other worlds and relate it with the situation on how the government is trying to help. So the resilience that comes in your heart, make sure at least you just kick it out. Just always go for the best option. If Pfizer has come out to say, hey, you may need a fourth vaccination, can you now adjust your mind? Do not stick out to that third one or the second one and say, no, I got done, because I mean, that's what you went for.
And also we need to be very vigilant and also getting all this information. Reason being, China is one of those countries that manage imports, and more so the imports that come in normally from the trader community coming from China. So it's very important for you to seek that in that particular way as a Ugandan out there. As a Ugandan businessman, it's very important and quite a situation which you need to get up to speed and understand what happens from in there. I think with that we would definitely be giving you more of the updates that are coming up from China, and also pushing closely to seeing what will be happening on the African continent. What are the cases so far? Because we're looking at how it is affecting business. A number of businesses have been shut in those provinces in China. But with that, we do take a break, and coming up afterwards, we have business tips, the business quotes, and also more SMB reports on your way. Stick around.